Welcome back to what Arty Noobs with General Disturbance. This is a GW Panther, the GW Panther, Tier 7 German SPG. It's located on the south spawn of Prokhorovka and it's under the command of dfcbader. Game started. Well, the GW Panther's armed with a 15cm howitzer. And it's got a fairly decent reload time, 22.15 seconds, and this is one of the few Artys that actually does have a turret, even though it's mounted on the back of a Panther tank, which is, well, a bit weak. No, it's actually quite a good Arty. Okay, he's capable. If I remember correctly, 680? Yes, 680 Alpha, penetrating 39mm of armour. And his first shot on a Carnarvon Action 10 gets a nice little hit with 264 hit points. It's a tier 8 battle. He's tier 7 Arty. He's going to earn extra XP. But there are some Mario Karts in the game. Yes, an EBR Hotchkiss comes into sight. Yeah, it's something unusual. His name, dfcbader. Now, if you're not British, you probably don't know who dfcbader is. And a nice hit there on that IS, 191. Well, I think he was a wing commander at the end of the game, but if he wasn't, he would have been a squadron leader. Douglas Bader joined the RAF during the 20s, and he trained to be a fighter pilot. And he had a terrible accident where he lost both his legs. His aircraft crashed while he was pulling an aerial maneuver, aerobatics, and he did it at very low level, and the aircraft wings dug into the ground, and it crashed into the ground really hard, and both his legs were completely mangled. And so they had to amputate his legs, and they took them off, but it meant that he had to leave the RAF and learn to live with tin legs, basically, metal legs. But he was still an enthusiastic pilot, and although he couldn't fly anymore with the RAF, he still had all his abilities. Nice hit on the Carnarvon again. Well, when the Second World War started, he immediately volunteered for service, but there was nothing in the regulations that said that somebody who'd lost both their legs could actually serve. And so initially they rejected him. But then he went to see somebody he knew and said, well, look, it's not in the Queen's regulations, well, the King's regulations it was then, that I can't serve, so why don't you let me have a chance? And so they arranged for a test flight with a flying instructor just to see what he just hit somebody with a blind shot, and I don't know who it was, but somebody up on that hill took the shell and must have taken the full force of it. Well, getting back to the story, no, he'd had a test flight, and the flying instructor said that when he gave his report, he said, Bader taught me things that I didn't even know. And so eventually they said, okay, well, we'll give him a chance. He actually does know how to fly, and he flies very well. And there's nothing in the regulations says that somebody without any legs can't actually fly as a fighter pilot. Plus, of course, they needed all the fighter pilots they could get, so they allowed him to fly, and he was actually very good. He was so good that they actually gave him a squadron of Canadian pilots to look after, and he was absolutely brilliant with them. They got lots and lots of kills, and they were located north of London, so they were further away from the action than normal, but they seemed to get a lot of kills on the bombers because they would turn up at the battle late, but the bombers would still be there. He's got a lovely hit there on that T-34-1. He's racked up nearly 1,500 hit points of damage so far, and the game's been going less than 5 minutes. That T-44 was in a bit of danger, but he did help his team to get the kill on that T-34-1. Well, there's one of the things about Douglas Bader was that he actually had this brilliant idea that if you could get a very large number of fighter aircraft all together all flying in one massive wing, huge numbers of aircraft. Then when the Germans came over, they would get literally pounced on by dozens of fighters from every direction, and virtually none of the Germans would survive. And although these wings took a long time to actually form up in the sky, they called them the Duxford Wing. It actually turned out that they were shooting down large numbers of bombers, but they weren't getting the fighters. And the guys who were actually in charge of the squadrons in the south were getting a bit annoyed that all Bader was doing was killing bombers, not fighters, and they needed to get rid of the fighters. But eventually it seemed to work. The Germans were suffering. They were losing a lot of aircraft, and eventually they had very few aircraft to fly. And the kill on the Carnarvon at last. Plus, of course, because the bombers were suffering such heavy losses, they wanted closer support from the German fighters. And because the German fighters were told to stay with the bombers, not to fight or kill the fighters as such until they came down, the Germans effectively were at a disadvantage. And as a result, they basically lost the Battle of Britain because they were told, the fighters were told, to stay with their bombers instead of fight independently. He's going for the turtle. Oh, just missed it. But he did track it momentarily. And we've lost the P-43 Turner. With 3 tanks up on the enemy at the moment, they're at a disadvantage. They just lost their turtle. They're now down to 3 tanks. They've got the Leo, a Scorpion, and a M12. And the Scorpion's the American version, the light 90mm armed tank destroyer. Well, dfcbader is taking his way over to the east side of the battlefield. Now, a bit more about Bader, the fighter pilot. During the war, he actually got shot down by a German aircraft. And what actually happens is he got captured. He was over France at the time. And because he kept trying to escape, yes, he did try to escape. Even with artificial legs, he was still trying to escape. They actually had to put him in Colditz, their top security prison in Germany, because he kept trying to run away and get back to England. Now, eventually, Colditz was rescued, or rather, it was liberated by the Americans who came in towards the end of the war. And Bader's first thought was to go up to the first American and say, "Where can I get an aircraft? I want to get into the fight again." The guy was irrepressible. Even with no legs, he still wanted to get in the fight. Even after being prisoner for a couple of years. The amusing thing was that when he actually ditched his aircraft when he was shot down, he actually had to leave his legs, his artificial legs, in the aircraft behind him because he couldn't get out. They were stuck. They were jammed inside the aircraft. So he actually parachuted without his legs from the aircraft. And the British had to carry a mission. They had to fly on a bombing mission. They had to drop the legs with a message for the Germans. So could you please pass these legs to our squadron leader, the one who you've just captured. Rounds out in the M12. Kill shot. Yes! Wins the game. I'm getting more and more like Jingles when I'm telling stories instead of actually watching the battle. But that's a rather unusual story. So if you ever get a chance, there's a British film called Reach for the Sky, which actually does tell the story of Douglas Bader, and it's well worth watching because he was a pretty amazing guy. And he did fly in the parade of aircraft that flew over London in the victory afterwards. But Well, it's an ace tanker for dfcbader in the GW Panther. He managed to get a bruiser medal for getting at least 5 critical hits. He got 11, and he got a Confederate medal for hitting more of the enemy than anyone else, and that's even after he got 2 kills as well, getting that kill, the Carnarvon, and the M12 right at the end of the game. Let's have a look at team score. Well, we can see that he did actually get the highest damage in that game, 2,840 hit points. Whilst I was prattling on about his namesake, he actually was doing a lot of damage. And the next high score after him was the T-44 with 2,731 and the Scorpion who get 2,713. When it came to kills though, it was shared because there was an awful lot of players who managed to get at least 2 kills, I'm afraid. I won't mention them all, but there's a lot of them on his own team, and there's just one on the enemy team who managed to get more than 1 kill. That was the Scorpion. And when it came to base XP, yes, he's top of the table on that one. So technically speaking, you could say he was top in all 3 columns. Because after all, he did have the high score in, or the joint high score in number of kills. He got 1,176 base experience points, 1,155 goes to the T-44, and 1,012 goes to the 45 TP. He fired 17 shots, got 11 direct hits and 1 penetration, 17 splash, damage of 2,840 hit points, all at more than 300 meters. He damaged 8 of the enemy, killed 2, did 1,456 hit points of stun assist of 16 stuns. On a premium account, he earned 35,343 credits, and after ammunition resupply, took away 33,975 credits. He received 1,176 XP, got 3,528 experience points from personal missions payout, and took away 5,292 experience points altogether. He says, Arty Noobs, excellent teammate spotting, helps a lot. Well, it certainly did, because they were giving you brilliant spots, but it was the fact that you kept plugging away, getting really good hits on the enemy, which is why you got such a high score at the end, plus of course that Confederate, which is well earned. And of course the Ace Tanker of it. That doesn't goes without saying. Anyway, so if you enjoyed that replay, please give this video a like and do subscribe to our channel and hit that notification button so you get alerted when there's a new video out, and thanks for watching.